Ross is a region of Scotland and a former earldom and county. The name Ross allegedly derives from a Gaelic word meaning headland, perhaps a reference to the Black Isle. Another possible origin is the West Norse word for Orkney.Ross, meaning Horse Island. The area once belonged to the Norwegian earldom of Orkney.Ross is a historical comital region, perhaps predating the Mormaerdom of Ross. History. Excavations of a rock shelf and shell-midden sand Applecross on the coast of West Norse have shown that the coast was occupied by Mesolithic hunter-gatherers. It may be doubted whether the Romans ever effected even a temporary settlement in the area of the modern county. In Roman times, and for long afterwards, the land was occupied by Picts, who, in the 6th and 7th centuries, were converted to Christianity by followers of St. Columba. Throughout the next 3 centuries the natives were continually harassed by Norwegian Viking raiders, of whose presence tokens have survived in several place names. At this time the country formed part of the great province of Moray, which then extended as far as the Dornic Firth and the Oikel, and practically comprised the whole of Ross and Cromarty. William IV, Earl of Ross, was present with his clan at the Battle of Bannockburn, and almost a century later the castle of Dingwall, the chief seat on the mainland of Donald, Lord of the Isles, was captured after the disastrous fight at Harlaw in Aberdeenshire, which Donald had provoked when his claim to the earldom was rejected. The earldom reverted to the crown in 1424, but James I soon afterwards restored it to the heiress of the line, the mother of Alexander MacDonald, 3rd Lord of the Isles, who thus became the 11th Earl. In consequence, however, of the treason of John MacDonald, 4th and last Lord of the Isles and 12th Earl of Ross, the earldom was again vested in the crown. 5 years later James III bestowed it on his second son, James Stuart, whom he also created Duke of Ross in 1488. By the 16th century the whole area of the county was occupied by different clans. The Rosses held what is now East to Ross, the Munros, the small tract around Ben Wyvis, including Dingwall, the MacLeods Lewis, and, in the mainland, the district between Lochmaree and Loch Torridon, the MacDonalds of Glengarry, Coigach, and the district between Strome Ferry and Kyle of Lochalsh, and the Mackenzies the remainder. The county of Ross was constituted in 1661, and Cromarty in 1685 and 1698, both being consolidated into the present county in 1889. Apart from occasional conflicts between rival clans, the only battles in the county were at Invercarron, at the head of Dornic Firth, when Montrose was crushed by Colonel Archibald Strachan on the 27th of April 1650, and at Glen, where the Jacobites, under the Earl of Seaforth, aided by Spaniards, were defeated by a force under the command of General Joseph Whiteman on the 10th of June 1719. Geography. Ross lies south of Sutherland and the Dornic Firth, west of the North Sea in the Moray Firth, north of the Beauly Firth and Inverness Shire, and east of the Minch. There are also a number of small islands off the area's west coast, among which are Gillian in the parish of Lochalsh, Crowland Islands in Applecross, Ellen Horsdale, and Isle of Ewe in Gaelic parish, Isle Martinant and Aeromore of the Summer Isles group in the parish of Loch Broom. The area of the mainland is 1,572,332 acres. On the North Sea side of the county the major firths are the Beauly Firth and the Moray Firth, which separate the Black Isle from Inverness Shire, the Cromarty Firth, which bounds the districts of East to Ross and the Black Isle, the Moray Firth, separating East to Ross from Earnshire, and the Dornic Firth, dividing North East Ross from from Sutherland, on the Atlantic coastline, which has a length of nearly 311 miles. The principal sea locks and bays, from south to north, are Loch Duick, Loch Alsh, Loch Erin, Loch Kishorn, Loch Torridon, Loch Shieldaig, Upper Loch Torridon, Gairloch, Loch Ewe, Gwynedd Bay, Loch Broom and Enid Bay. The chief capes include Tarbot Ness on the east coast, and Coigach, Greenstone Point, Rouvary, Red Point and Hamha Point on the west. Almost all the southern boundary with Inverness Shire consists of a rampart of peaks, many of them Munros, and Ryabarchan, Cernal Upper Ich, Carney Ige, Mamsodale, Ben Harder, Sir Farron, the Saddle. To the north of Glen Torridon of the masses of Lythach, Bennet, Ben Allagan and Ben Daeg. On the northeastern shore of Loch Maree rises Sleag, while the Fanage group contains 6 Munros, the highest being Sirmore. The immense isolated bulk of Ben Wyvis forms the most noteworthy feature in the northeast, and Antialic in the northwest appears equally conspicuous, though less solitary. Only a small fraction of the west and south of the area is under 1,000 feet in height. East to Ross and the peninsula of the Black Isle are comparatively level. The longest stream of the mainland portion of Ross and Cromarty is the River Orne, which rises from the slopes of Ansidheen and pursues a northeasterly course to its confluence with the River Conan after a run of about 26 miles. A small part of which forms the boundary with Inverness Shire. At O'Gowrie the stream rushes through a narrow gorge where the drop is considerable enough to make the Falls of Orion. The River Blackwater flows from mountains in Strathvaich southeast for 18 miles until it joins the Conan, forming soon after it leaves Loch Garve the small but picturesque Falls of Rogie. Within a short distance of its exit from Loch Louichart, the Conan pours over a series of cascades and rapids and then pursues a winding course of 12 miles, mainly eastward to the head of the Cromarty Firth. Situated above Glen Elchaig in the southwest of the region of the Falls of Glommock, the stream giving rise to them drains a series of small lochs on the northern flanks of Ben Harder and, in an almost unbroken sheet over a metre in width, effects a sheer drop of 110 metres, and soon afterwards ends its course in Glen Elchaig. The falls are usually visited from Inversheel 11 kilometres to the southwest, 12 miles southeast of Ullapool, on the estate of Braemore. Other falls of Measac are formed by the Droma, a headstream of the River Broom. The Cascades, 3 in number, are close to Corrieshalik Gorge. The River Oikel, throughout its course, forms the boundary with Sutherland. There are many freshwater lochs, the largest being Loch Maree. In the far northwest, 243 feet above the sea, lies Loch Shanascaig, a loch of such a irregularity of outline that it has a shoreline of 17 miles. It contains several wooded islands, and drains into Enid Bay by the River Polly. Loch Anfarda, 1,000 feet above the sea, is 4 miles in length, and covers an area of 1,112 acres, and is 42 fathoms deep, with a mean depth of 17 fathoms. Once drained by the Meuse, it has been tapped a little farther west by the Abhain Arfasai, which has lowered the level of the loch. Other lochs are Finn Loch, 8 miles long by 1 mile wide, famous for its herons. Loch Louichart towards the centre of the area wide, fringed with birches and having the shape of a crescent. The mountain-girt Loch Fanage, and the wild narrow lochs Mona and Mulladock, on the Inverness Shire boundary of the Straths valleys. The more important run from the centre eastwards, such as Strathconan, Strathbran, Strathgarve, Strathpeffer and Strathcarron. Excepting Glen Orrin in the east-central district, the longer glens lie in the south and towards the west. In the extreme south, Glenshiel runs between 5 mountains to its mouth on Loch Duick. The A87 passes down the Glen. Further north lie Glen Elchaig, Glen Cairn, and Glen Torridon. The railway from Dingwall runs through Glencairn to Kyle of Lochash. Geology. The central portion of this county is occupied by the younger highland schists Adale Radian series. These consist of quartzites, mica schists, garnetiferous mica schists and gneisses, all with a gentle inclination towards the southeast. On the eastern side of the county, the Dale Radian schists are covered unconformably by the Old Red Sandstone. The boundary runs southward from Edderton on Dornick Firth by Strathpeffer to the neighbourhood of Bewley. These rocks comprise red flags and sandstones, grey bituminous flags and shales. An anticlinal fold with a southwest-northeast axis brings up the basal beds of the series about the mouth of Cromarty Firth and exposes once more the schists in the souters guarding the entrance to the firth. The western boundary of the younger schist is formed by the Great Precambrian dislocation line that traverses the county in a fairly direct course, from Elphin on the north by Ullapool to Glencairn. Most of the area west of the line of disturbance is covered by Torridonian sandstone, mainly dark reddish sandstones, grits and shales, resting unconformably on the ancient Lewisham gneiss with horizontal or slightly inclined bedding. The unconformity is well exposed on the shores of Gaelic, Loch Maree and Loch Torridon. These rocks, which attain a considerable thickness and are divisible into three subgroups, build up the mountain districts of Applecross, Coigach and elsewhere. Within the Torridonian tract, the older Lewisham gneiss occupies large areas north of Coigach, on the east of Enna Bay, between Gryneid Bay and Loch Maree, between the last named and Gaelic, on both sides of Middle Loch Torridon, and at many other spots smaller patches appear. The Lewisham gneiss is everywhere penetrated by basic dikes, generally with a northwest-southeast direction. Some of these are of great breadth. The Torridonian rocks are succeeded unconformably by a series of Cambrian strata confined to a variable but narrow belt west of the line of main thrusting. This belt of Cambrian rocks has suffered an enormous amount of subordinate thrusting. It is composed of the following subdivisions in ascending order: false-bedded quartzite, pipe rock quartzite, fucoid beds and nolenolus band, serpulite, grit, Ernest dolomite and marble, Ernest dolomite and limestone. But these are not always visible at any one spot. So great has been the disturbance in the region of thrusting that in some places, as in the neighbourhood of Loch Kishorn and elsewhere, the rocks have been completely overturned and the ancient gneiss has been piled upon the Torridonian. On the shore of Moray Firth at Rothy a small patch of Kimmeridge shale occurs, and beneath the cliffs of Shandwick there is a little low oolite with a thin seam of coal. Glacial striae are found upon the mountains up to heights of 3,300 feet, and much boulder clay is found in the valleys and spread over large areas in the eastern districts. Raised beaches occur at up to 108 feet or so above the present sea level. They are well seen in Loch Carron. Climate and agriculture. The west coast has high rainfall, an annual average of 50.42 inches at Loch Broom and 62 in at Strome Ferry, but on the east coast the annual average is only 27 in. The average daily maximum temperature for the year is 46.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Average daily maxima for January and July are 38 degrees Fahrenheit and 57 degrees Fahrenheit respectively. The most fertile tracts lie on the eastern coast, especially in East to Ross and the Black Isle, where the soil varies from a light sandy gravel to a rich deep loam. As of 1911, among grain crops oats were most generally cultivated, but barley and wheat were also raised. Turnips and potatoes were the chief green crops. The higher land contains much good pasturage, with many sheep, Blackface being the principal breed. Most of the horses, principally half-breds between the Old Garons and Clydesdales, were maintained for the purposes of agriculture. The herds of cattle, mainly native Highlander crosses, were large, many of them supplying the London market. Pigs were reared, though in smaller numbers than formerly, most generally by the crofters. As of 1911, about 800,000 acres were devoted to deer forests, a greater area than in any other county in Scotland, among the largest being Gaelic with 50,000 acres, Fanage with 20,000 acres, Kinloch with 20,600 acres, Braymore with 40,000 acres, Inchby with 21,000 acres and Dundonald with 23,000 acres. At one time the area under wood must have been remarkable, if we accept the common derivation of the word Ross as from the Old Irish ros, a wood, and there was until recent times a considerable extent of native woodland, principally pine, oak, ash and alder. The fauna was noteworthy. Red and roe deer abounded, and foxes and alpine hares were common, while badgers and wild cats were occasionally trapped. Winged game was plentiful, and amongst birds of prey the golden eagle and osprey occurred. Waterfowl of all kinds frequented the sea lochs. Many rivers and lochs were rich in salmon and trout, and the pearl mussel was found in the bed of the Conan. Other industries. Tourism is a major industry in the region, with over 20% of the workforce employed in the wholesale, restaurant and hotels sector, second only to the public service sector. A little over 5% of the workforce are employed in agriculture, forestry and fishing, traditionally major industries in the region. The oil industry, which spurred a rapid increase in industrial development in the 1970s, is in decline, although still a major employer. The Glen and Glenmorangie distilleries are prominent whisky distilleries. A railway, the Far North Line from Inverness, enters the county to the north of Beaulieu and runs northwards through Dingwall and onwards to Tain and along the southerly bank of the Dornoch. Firth. From the single-track line continues north-northeast through Sutherland to Thurso and Wick and Caithness. The Isle.Loch line runs west-southwest from Dingwall to the Isle. Antiquities. The principal relics of antiquity, mainly stone circles, cairns and forts, appear in the eastern district. A vitrified fort crowns the hill of Knockfarrell in the parish of Fodderty, and there is a circular dun near the village of Loch Carron. Some fine examples of sculptured stones occur, especially those that, according to tradition, mark the burial place of the three sons of a Danish king who were shipwrecked off the coast of Nigg. The largest and handsomest of these three crosses, the Clach or Stone of Lamentation, stands at Shandwick. It is about 10 feet high and contains representations of the martyrdom of St. Andrew and figures of an elephant and dog. It fell during a storm in 1847 and was broken in 3 pieces. On the top of the cross in Nigg churchyard are 2 figures with outstretched arms in the act of supplication. The dove descends between them, and below are 2 dogs. The cross was knocked down by the fall of the belfry in 1725, but has been riveted together. The third stone formerly stood at Hilton of Cadboll, but was removed for security to the grounds of Invergordon Castle. Among old castles are those of Lochslin, in the parish of Fern, said to date from the 13th century, which, though ruinous, possesses 2 square towers in good preservation. Boulogne, in the parish of Tarbet, once a stronghold of the Earls of Ross, the remains of Dingwall Castle, their original seat, and Ellandonan in Loch Alsh, which was blown up by British warships during the abortive Jacobite Rising in 1719. Local government areas. See also Politics of the Highland Council area. The local government county was created under the Local Government Act 1889, which also established elected county councils for all counties in Scotland. The county of Ross and Cromarty was nominally a merger of 2 older administrative counties, Ross-shire and Cromarty-shire, but there were some alterations to boundaries. The alterations divisions became fully effective for all purposes except parliamentary representation. In 1892, the county included 6 burghs: Cromarty, Dingwall, Fortrose, Invergordon, Stornoway and Tain. Dingwall was the county town. When counties and burghs were abolished as local government areas in 1975 under the Local Government Act 1973, the area of the county was divided between 2 new areas, the Highland region and the Western Isles, and the Ross and Cromarty district of the region was created as one of 8 districts of the new region. Stornoway and the district of Lewis merged into the Western Isles. Also, the new Ross and Cromarty district excluded 2 other areas, which merged into other districts of the region. The electoral division of Kincardine was merged into Sutherland, and the Southwest electoral division was merged into Skye-and-Loch. In 1996, under the Local Government etc. Act 1994, the district was abolished and the Highland region was turned into a unitary council area. The new unitary authority, the Highland Council, then adopted the area of the former district as a council management area, and created area committees to represent it. The management area consisted then of 13 wards, each electing 1 councillor by the first-past-the-post system of election. The council as a whole had 72 members. Ward boundaries were altered in 1999 to create 80 new wards, but management area boundaries were unaltered. Therefore, area committees ceased to represent exactly the areas for which they were named and made decisions. 18 wards and, therefore, 18 councillors were related to the Ross and Cromarty management area. Under the Local Governance Act 2004, ward boundaries changed again this year, 2007. Also, the 8 management areas were abolished in favour of 3 new corporate management areas. The Ross and Cromarty area was divided between the Caithness, Sutherland and East Ross area and the Ross, Skye and Lochba area.